In our culture, there's a term called wagutuin, which means we are all related and we're all interconnected. What this concept means is that as a community, we take care of one another. It's every community working together for the betterment of all.
My name is Merle Ballard, and I'm with the University of Manitoba, and I'm one of the co-leads for this project. And I want to introduce this app that we developed. It's called the COVID-19 Digital app. It's a brand new app that was developed specifically for Indigenous peoples at the community level. This app is a new tool that will help First Nations health directors at the community level make real-time informed decisions about their First Nations members' health.
When I first heard about the COVID Indigenous app, I was thrilled to bring it forward to the health directors. A lot of the communities are challenged by the fact that they don't have enough data. The communities are not receiving data in real time. There is a real lag. The COVID Indigenous app is very easy to use. It's very user-friendly.
Some of the questions that a health director might be asking its community members is, what types of support do you need? How are you feeling? Mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. At a time when meeting with your community members might not be possible, the app provides a safe alternative way to gather feedback from your community.
This app is a very important tool in our fight against COVID.
I think this app would be very useful for program planning. Health directors would get a very good idea of the status of their community members and what they need to possibly focus their attention on.
We have people that are going to be there for you if we run into problems. We have a support system in place.
Our organization will provide funding to help you hire a community researcher to help you with the digital app.
We encourage the community members to participate in the survey. We will give them an honorarium, which will go a long ways in assisting them during these difficult times.
For communities who may have connectivity issues, the app also includes a local area network where community researchers can gather information remotely.
This app is fantastic during COVID, as it allows community researchers to bring the hardware that they need for clients to do the survey and remain physically distant. It can be done out of their home, and there is no risk. It's done remotely.
Long after COVID is gone, the health directors will be able to use this app for their day-to-day operations.
We really want you to know that there's technology out there that will help you as a director, as a leader of your community, to get a better sense of the health and well-being of your community.
Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Wishing you good health and wellness. Stay safe. Miigwech. Janice.
It's my honor to introduce our next speakers, who are actually the co-leads on the Digital Health Project. Dr. Steph McLaughlin is a professor and coordinator of Environmental Conservation Lab at the University of Manitoba. Steph's overall goal as an academic is to engage in research that works for environmental and social justice in close collaboration with Indigenous communities, while also contributing to academic literature and being an effective teacher. He has worked with communities regarding environmental health as it relates to the oil sands, hydropower, and now COVID-19. He lives in Winnipeg with his partner, 2 kids, and their lab puppy. Contributions to the academic literature and benefits the livelihoods and environments of Aboriginal and rural communities and other stakeholders. Our other co-lead, Dr. Merle Ballard, is an assistant professor, Indigenous scholar at the Department of Chemistry Faculty of Sciences at the University of Manitoba. She's an Anishinaabe from Lake St. Martin First Nation. Dr. Ballard has researched and documented the flooding and emergency responses of her traditional homelands of Lake St. Martin First Nation and neighboring communities. She is currently a member of the Aboriginal Traditional Knowledge Subcommittee, has served as an advisor to the Ecological Reserves Advisory Committee, as a commissioner, Clean Environment Commission, and is a past board member with the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. So I'd like to invite Dr. Steph McLaughlin and Dr. Merle Ballard to share a little bit more about the Digital Health Project.
Okay, thank you. We're very happy to introduce our app. The app is called a COVID-19 Indigenous app, and it's one of the first number of initiatives that's been undertaken by our project, a COVID-19 pandemic response. And this is in response to Kitatapit Magat Midiwayawin, which is a Cree word loosely translated to mean the control and ownership over health and well-being. We have a partnership with about 11 First Nation communities in Manitoba and through Ontario, and we want to expand further into Saskatchewan, to Alberta, across Canada, and we want to do it internationally as well, and that's our goal. Because there's a lot of needs with Indigenous communities. They want to manage their own data. They want to manage their own outcomes on health, and there's a lot of problems that are across the nation, across the globe, when it comes to Indigenous people's health. And this is one of the initiatives that we're undertaking to assist the First Nations people health. Okay, Steph, back to you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so we wrote for some funding. So our funding comes through the federal government, through the health research. And so they put together way back in February, they had a call for funding for researchers to put proposals together within a week that focused on the pandemic. And if you can remember back to February of 2020, that was still something, you know, that was largely in other parts of the world, and it hadn't really kind of hit Canada at all. And so even at that point, I wasn't really sure if it was something that communities wanted to do. And so I reached out and found very quickly that it was something that health directors that I knew across Manitoba and other parts of Canada were interested in. And so I put together a proposal, and so Merle was part of that, and a number of other people, and that's the larger project. And so as part of that, what we had said right from the beginning is that we wanted it to be collaborative and community driven right from the get-go at every stage along the way, and controlled by communities. And so to do this, we have this advisory council, which is made up of these health directors from communities and representatives from tribal councils and health authorities, mostly from Manitoba and Northwestern Ontario. And so we had our first meeting when we found out we got the funding in March, again, almost a year ago now. So they said, yeah, you know, kind of, we're already responding as communities. And so we'd like you to focus on communications. They said that this idea of management of data would be really, really important to them. So they said that kind of this issue around access to data and control over health data had been a problem in previous pandemics, and they anticipated right that it would be an issue again here. And so way back then in March, we started saying, well, how are we going to do this? And so neither Merle nor I had any background in digital app development, you know, where kind of our research and our work is very, very different. And so through a number of circumstances, we reached out and connected with two people that you hear from, Shauna Lorenz and Craig Dietrich, at that time, both in Los Angeles, and we started working on the app. But importantly, it was an app approach that was very, very different. And so it's taken us almost a year now to get it kind of out and about and in the public. But through every stage along the way, we reached out to those same community health directors and other community health directors to find out how we would do this. And especially important to us because these are such sensitive data and they get misused so often. And there's a whole history of this kind of misuse with Indigenous communities, especially. We said, well, we need to figure out a way that we can do that so that communities remain in control over the data from beginning to end. And so what you'll see this afternoon is all the ways in which that we've done this. And so in a sense, if you imagine, it's the communities that are at the center of it. And then we as researchers and the support team that you see around you today all do whatever we can to support that. But the communities right from the get-go are the center of it.
Indigenous peoples need their own data, but they don't have the means to collect their own data. And part of the app, what we're ensuring with the app are the principles of OCAP are being respected, are being followed. These are the ownership. People want to own their own data, and that's what this app is going to do. People want to control their data. The community directors will be the ones that will get the data, and they'll be the ones assigning the code to their community members, and they'll be the ones that are controlling the data. They're going to be the ones that are accessing the data. Once the data comes in, we won't be able to see the data because the community will have it. And these go back to the governance because data sovereignty is a part of Indigenous governance, and we're giving back to the community because a lot of times researchers just go in there and collect data, they never give it back. So this is very important. This data is going to ensure data sovereignty and governance and Indigenous governance on health. And
if you can imagine back in March, I mean, it wasn't until the early summer that First Nations in Canada started experiencing COVID, right? And so kind of the whole nature of the crisis has evolved around us. And now we're talking about vaccines, in the new year, in 2021, and how those unfold out. And so in a sense, we're always scrambling. Now, one of the amazing aspects of the app, as you'll find out, is that it's completely controllable by the health directors. And to help health directors, what we're doing is we're hiring community researchers to work within communities so we don't add extra burden. And we're paying participants to fill in the kind of through honorarium to fill in surveys. But the idea being that the community researchers would they would support participants and health directors, even in cases where communities don't have good internet connectivity, that we've got ideas around how to bridge that with the technology and to make it as useful as possible right from the get-go. If community health directors don't want us involved as researchers, then they can look at the data themselves. They don't need to know to involve anybody, but we'll play a support role if it's useful. And so ideally, even though there'll be some questions that are in common from community to community, that the questions that are reflected in the app, which will let health directors assess the changes that are taking place in health and well-being within their community, that they will be able to tailor those and make them unique to their own needs and have them reflect that. And then when we say, right, Merle, when we say health, well, this is not a Western approach to health. It's not biomedical only approaches. There's the spiritual, there's the cultural, there's the language, there's the land-based, there's the ceremonial aspects of health, the mental aspects. And so it's very, very holistic in approach, which means that communities can then adapt these tools for their own use.
What this app is going to do, the goal of the project is to develop culturally appropriate countermeasures at COVID. And the questions that are in the app, I will be addressing those because there's a lot of countermeasures right now that are going on within Indigenous communities that are not being practiced with the rest of Canada. And these are very proactive countermeasures the communities are doing. For example, we all know about the communities blocking outsiders from going into their community. That's a countermeasure. And there's a different countermeasures too that are going on within the community that the rest of us don't know about. And these are very important because they're dealing with COVID within what they know best for their communities. And this is part of what the app will do is they're going to be using the information that's collected from this app for the benefit of their communities to make a good decisions and a good decision making for the future. Another thing about this app too is the longevity of it. Once the pandemic is over, whether it's 3 waves or 4 waves, but it's going to be used by the communities for long term, and because they'll be able to adjust what's the questions in the app, and they'll have their data, and they'll make informed decisions for the future because they'll have experienced already and they'll have noted what they went through and the decisions that they made to cope. So that's why this app is important for the communities, because it's their app and they're going to use it to make informed decisions.
Right. And so originally we had thought that we would very strategically work with communities and kind of the prairies, if you like, in Canada, mostly First Nations communities. And then people have been contacting us from other provinces. And so that's why we decided that we would launch this publicly and at a national or even international level. And so in terms of who is welcome to use this app, of course, there's no cost because it's being paid with public funding and taxpayers' dollars. But it's generally speaking, it's any Indigenous community. So it could be First Nations community or Métis community or Inuit community in any part of Canada. And for that matter, any Indigenous community around the world who's interested in taking advantage of this technology. Again, this kind of very, very laborious kind of perseverance ridden approach that we've taken over the last year. To any community that's interested in using this technology is welcome to approach us, and then we'll find ways that we can support that. And again, it can be just communities who want to do it on their own and don't want to have anything to do with us, to communities that want to build relationship with us and a long-term relationship with us. It's fine. The way, as you'll find out with the app, is that there's more of a baseline first time filling in where people fill in the questionnaire, and then that will probably take 25 or 30 minutes the first time, and then each time thereafter where they just do a quick check-in, it'll take maybe 2 or 3 minutes just to let their health directors know what's changed. And it can be about impacts, it can be about responses, and it can be also in terms of programming, how successful programming has been, community programming, kind of how successful the vaccine rollout has been, assuming that communities want to use the vaccines at all. And again, it's ready to go. And so it's as communities who contact us, then we've kind of got the infrastructure and the support team in place to make that happen right away.
Awesome.
One of the things we recognize with First Nation communities within Canada and across the national level and the international levels are the issues are the same. We face the same social determinants of well-being, which are the economic, environmental, there's a lot of times we don't have jobs in the community, and that leads to a lot of issues, social, mental, and environmental too, the access to land, the access to water, and there's a lot of issues with people's health because of the foods that we eat. Education levels are not what they're supposed to be compared to the rest of society and the rest of Canada. Social issues, housing shortages, the overcrowding, and these determine the community's well-being and the individual's well-being. And these are some of the issues that we included when designing the questions that are in the app.
And it's our hope, just in conclusion, that this app, this technology, which will be kind of implemented, it's the first of its kind to be used in rural and northern Indigenous communities and in Canada, for example, that it can play admittedly a small but a critical in kind of mitigating or lessening that social injustice around health and allow communities to take full sovereignty over their health and well-being. Thank you.
We have very special guests. We actually have the app developer, Craig Dietrich, who comes to us from down south, as well as Dr. Shauna Lorenz, and they will be doing a hands-on demo of the app. We are so pleased to announce that it is available on Google Play, as well as iOS, the App Store. And if you haven't already done so, you can take the time now to go onto your device and begin to search for the app. So you'll find the app in Google Play. Keyword is Indigenous, and the iOS, you can search for COVID-19 Indigenous. So with that, I'll pass things over to Craig and Shauna. Very pleased to have you here today.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So I'm Shauna Lorenz. I'm a professor at Occidental College in Los Angeles. And I'm joined by Craig Dietrich, who's my collaborator. We work together on digital humanities projects. And for the past, 7 or 8 months, have been working with this team to get these apps up and running in conversation with the lead researchers and the board of directors. So Craig has just posted into the chat the search terms that you're going to need in order to find these apps. So just out of curiosity, it'd be really interesting to know whether you have an iPhone or have an Android. And if there's any way you could type that into the chat, that would be super helpful for us. If you have an iPhone and you'd like to download the app in order to, kind of test it out here today, what you need to type in is COVID-19 Indigenous with spaces between the words. The apps are a little bit funny about how they let you search. If what you have is an Android phone, Android has been a little bit trickier about allowing you to search for the app, but as of this morning, it's working if you type in COVID-19 Indigenous with no spaces. Or if for some reason that doesn't come up, you can type in Indigenous, and about 20 apps down, you'll see the COVID-19 Indigenous.
Thanks, Shauna. I'm Craig in Los Angeles. And like Shauna mentioned, we developed the app and the technology and put it on the app stores. And so hopefully you're able to find it. And if you can't, if the search terms just aren't working, we have links that go directly to the app that we can send you. That's not a problem. We're just doing it this way because we're over Zoom and Facebook Live, and we don't know how those hyperlinks are going to distribute just at the right now at this exact moment, but we can get those to you, no problem. This is what you'll see when you first encounter the app. The app's primary purpose is to gain access to the COVID-19 Indigenous survey, but there's other things that the app provides as well. The first is information about the project. This is important because the COVID-19 Indigenous project has a lot of different aspects to it, including the survey, and the About Project and About Us subsections of the project tab will give you access to our Facebook page and our web page, where there's all sorts of resources and information and videos that you can see. We also have a video and media section that we've called the Culture and Resilience section. Right now, there's one video in each subsection. In the culture section, there's highlights from a conversation on Indigenous food sovereignty. And in the resilience section, there's a video that speaks to resilience in the communities. This section will continue to grow over time. We have other videos and media queued up. So as that happens, you can click the Fetch New Content from the Server button at the bottom, and it will reload those contents for you when those become available. So finally is the survey itself. They're first presented with information about the survey and more links to our website. We want to be as transparent as possible about how the survey works and how the information is used and who are the intended audiences are for the survey and the health directors. So we don't shy away from presenting that information to you when you go to take the survey. Clicking Take Survey will present you with the Enter Participation Code as part of the app. And I'm going to reshare the other screen here. When you encounter the participant code, we have two codes that will always work. The first is PT-baseline, and the second is PT-weekly. There are two versions of each survey. The baseline survey is longer, as Steph mentioned earlier, and is meant to provide introductory information about the participant. And the weekly survey is much shorter and is more of a check-in and providing updated information to the baseline survey. So go ahead, Sean.
Just to jump in for a second. So these are really just sample codes that we've set up for health directors to kind of browse the survey or try filling it out. In cases where communities decide to actually use these apps, they each, every community receives their own dedicated codes that are specific to that community.
Right. So that speaks to the last part of this this text box that's being shown here. If you download the app now and you use one of these test participation codes, and the time comes when a health director asks you to enter a new code, don't fret. You can reset your app using the Delete All App Data button that is at the bottom of the About Survey page. And health directors that are distributing participation codes to individuals will know that this feature exists. So the app will remember your participation code until you tell it not to. And then you can enter a new participation code. So once you enter your individual participation code, when that comes someday, you won't have to keep entering it. It'll store it for you and remember that you're a participant in the survey. So once you enter your participation code, it's going to then ask you to consent to the survey. You can read the consent text, which is more transparency into how the process works. And then after consenting, you will be presented with the questionnaire survey itself. I don't know if this is the best platform, Zoom and Facebook Live, to really go into the details of the questionnaire survey itself. So I'll just leave you with this screen grab here. But as you can imagine, it contains elements that all surveys do, although we tried to make it interesting and user-friendly using slider bars and easy to use checkboxes. One particularly important aspect of the survey is that some questions will enlist you to answer via text or media, which is to say that we'll ask you an open-ended question, such as, how are you feeling about COVID today? And instead of a slider or checkbox, it's going to ask you, do you want to answer this question via text, in which case you can enter paragraphs of text or a sentence or multiple sentences, or media, which means that you can upload a video or an image as your answer. So we feel that this really opens the survey to expanded qualitative information coming from the participants that are filling in the survey.
And I just wanted to jump in again. So what you will find right now is a sample survey, but I think it's important to iterate that this is really a living, breathing project. And the idea is that health directors using the web app dashboard will design their own surveys. And so the survey that is presented to specific communities is really determined by those communities themselves. So this is sort of, a sample of, questions that could be asked. There may be some common questions that communities decide to, collectively present, but there's really a lot of room for community health directors to design this themselves. The other thing is, as Steph, I thought, iterated really well, and Merle talked about, is that every step of the way, this has been a collaborative process, and that's not going to stop now. So as this app begins to be in circulation in communities, part of the research process is going to be to figure out, where it needs to be, tweaked to better serve the needs of those communities.
So we'll just provide a quick glimpse into the system that health directors can use to customize their questionnaires. You should see a web browser that looks like a dashboard, because it is a dashboard. It presents community health directors with access to the survey results. Now, we're not going to go into that particularly here. We have a video actually that where the main audience is our health directors, and it will show how survey results are presented to in this dashboard interface. But I wanted to quickly show that here is the baseline survey and the weekly survey that you are accessing if you use those participant codes. And I can actually click on the baseline survey here, and you can see these are the actual questions that constitute the baseline survey. So it's really easy for me as an administrator to edit the questions in any form that they might take. And I can add or remove new questions. So what health directors will have the ability to do is create new surveys, base them on these existing surveys if they'd like to, and then edit those questions so that they can strive to customize the survey to the needs of their community.
Just to sort of reiterate the data sovereignty aspect of this project, each health director would have their own code for logging into this monitor, and they alone would be able to see the data for their communities.
At this point, now we're going to invite Janice Solstice from Mamawasing Community Health Services, and we're going to ask her to maybe share a little bit of, how she thinks that communities may use this app. So Janice, welcome. It's very nice of you to join us here today.
Thank you, Evan. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to start by saying that when we first found out about the app, our organization, we thought it was a wonderful app that we wanted to bring forward to the health directors in our communities. We service 7 communities along the North Shore. We met up with the health directors who were very excited and very thrilled to learn of the app. Their feelings were very positive about knowing the people in their community, keeping up on their wellness. They love the fact that the data belonged to them and that it wasn't shared with anyone else. They felt that they could get buy-in from their community members knowing that. And so it was a real pleasure to be part of this group, and I'm thrilled at the development of this, and I think it will be a benefit not just through COVID, but for future. A lot of our health directors struggle with the healthcare needs of their community members, and as many of you know, some of the community members do not have phones, do not have internet access. And so it's very hard sometimes to follow the community members to see where services might need to be provided more and where they need to focus some of their services depending on the community members and what needs to be addressed. So they were absolutely thrilled. And I think most communities, once they hear of this app and learn how easy it is and how what the benefits it could do and bring to the community and their members, I think we'll see this go big, very big. And so I'm very, very happy that we found you guys first. So thank you very much, Evan. It's been a pleasure working with the group.
Thank you so much, Janice. I don't know if anyone was able to catch that Janice was actually featured in the video that was played earlier in the webinar. So once again, Janice, thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you so much for being here with us. We really look forward to working with you moving forward. And so as we move forward, we're going to be opening up this next portion of the webinar to what are some of the next steps for any individual community that may be interested. If you are a health director, if you're a leader in your community, or if you've seen something that you would like more information about here today, we're going to be addressing that. So we'd actually like to invite Becky to join us here. Becky is the project coordinator for the Digital Health Initiative, and she can talk a little bit more about what are the next steps to get your community involved.
Thanks, Evan. I'm just going to share my screen to show you some information on where to find our webpage and also our Facebook. So our wonderful host today, Evan, as he mentioned before, he's the outreach coordinator. So his contact information is here, and he's really great to answer any questions about the initiative. And if your community is interested in signing up for it, he can address that and help set up a meeting if you want to meet with the team and kind of talk about the logistics of what to do and how to get started with the project. And we also have our webpage that has lots of information on it. And it also has information about some of the other initiatives. So the communications work that we do, there's other webinars that we've put on, and you can access them there. We did one a few months ago that was about proposal writing, and it also has some infographics on there that have been put together that just talk about safe practices during COVID. So I will also post this into the chat if anyone wanted to copy it down. But without further ado, we can open it up for questions if anyone has any.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to once again invite our fearless leader, Dr. Steph McLaughlin. I know he had a pretty rough week, and Steph had some health issues there. So we're very glad that you're able to join us here today, Steph. So if you want to come on back on and maybe share a little bit of maybe some closing remarks on the project.
Thanks, Evan. So it was kind of hinted at earlier that I wasn't going to be able to run around and find that magical, kind of whatever it is, kind of ingredient in my fridge or what have you that every Indigenous community has. And so I've basically been in bed for the last week, not because I'm particularly lazy, but I had surgery on the weekend and kept on getting bumped. And so I was in emergency at the hospital. And so it was all unanticipated and it was all lots of pain and worry, but it did give me an opportunity to reflect a lot. And certainly in all the privilege that I have being here, being a prof at the university and being surrounded by kind of all the privilege in terms of the way that we live, I've been kind of suddenly, in the last week, I've been kind of confronted by what I call kind of the reality of the COVID castle in terms of what's it like inside hospitals dealing with COVID and people on my ward and the nurses and all the healthcare providers. And even though it had nothing to do with COVID, it was still an opportunity for me to think. And so I contrast that, and there was still lots of hope and resilience there, but I contrast that with the tremendous hope that kind of, I think we've seen reflected in the webinar today and the presentations today, from really across the country and people from different walks of life who are in a sense struggling to find ways of containing this pandemic. And it just gives me pause because I think as researchers, we often aren't really given the opportunity to be at the front lines to work side by side with first responders and other healthcare providers and communities in the time of a pandemic. And I think kind of just the way this project has emerged and our advisory council, again, almost a year ago, saying so rightly that this needed to be a reality. It was going to be something that we needed as the pandemic has unfolded around us, really kind of foreshadowed what we would be doing a year later. And so yeah, I thank everyone for participating in that. And so that's it for me in terms of one sense, is just the tremendous hope that I see here. And of course, it's important to be pragmatic. The technology is only one small piece. I mean, the way the technology has evolved, just the way that Shauna and Craig have kind of showed up today, to talk about the app development. I mean, this speaks to the nature of the participatory approach to this technology. As a lot of researchers, I spend time looking at other examples of technology being used. And really, this is the first of its kind around COVID-19. And while these kinds of digital apps, or some people call it mobile technology, have been used around Indigenous health and well-being before, around non-pandemic related situations, so health in general, it's almost always urban kind of Indigenous groups. And it's rare, if ever, that it's in the north, and it's rare, and if ever, that it's in rural. And so I think in all sorts of ways, this technology is a game changer. And hopefully, not only does it do a good job, and I'm sure it will in terms of supporting communities moving forward, but as a number of people have said, this afternoon, that it can be adapted post-COVID to being used for other kind of help, just because it's so holistic, because it's participatory, because it's kind of user-friendly, and because we have the supports that we can provide as researchers in the background. I think it can be adapted in that way. And so, yeah, in a sense, moving forward, I'm kind of hoping that we can, in a sense, do whatever we can together to help ensure that it gets used in ways that are useful to communities, whether it's assessing risk and impacts, whether it's affirming kind of the community responses that are already in place, whether it's kind of evaluating programs, kind of as we've heard today from all sorts of people, individually and collectively, communities are doing all sorts of things at the ground level to caretake their health. And so kind of using this app can help communities evaluate, how effective it is, who's being left in, who's being left out, kind of gaps in terms of support. And especially, around vaccines now, where I don't think 3 or 4 months ago, many of us were thinking about vaccines, and obviously now vaccine, and even the term vaccine hesitancy or concern about using vaccines is something that we hear about every day and that communities are dealing with. And so, there's no doubt that kind of other things will emerge over the next, 6 months or a year that we don't anticipate now around COVID, that this app will be able to use moving forward. And so, yeah, so thanks, Evan. It's been wonderful being able to work with you over the last, kind of 6 months on this project. And I know you play a really critical role in terms of grounding kind of what we're doing in universities and in cities in the reality of communities. And I think, all sorts of people on the team do that. But my hope is kind of that people will recognize, this app for the opportunity that it is, in helping support communities moving forward. And so I think everyone, kind of the panelists for sure, but also the people, the attendees who showed up on Zoom and on Facebook, for showing interest and considering using this app. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Steph. I know that for me personally, I've had the opportunity over the last several months to speak with community members and, hear the stories at the ground level. I really enjoy the work that I'm able to do, around the project. And, I hear stories of resilience every day, hear some of the positive things that are happening in each of our communities. The grandfathers who are out there in polar vortex weather chopping wood and preparing their sweat lodges so that they can pray for the health and well-being of their relatives and their community members, and for the children. It's the grandmothers who are inside the home beside the fire sipping on tea and beating moccasins and preparing regalia, knowing that their grandchildren are going to be out there dancing in a powwow sometime in the near future. And it's that hope, that we have, that we're always in a positive mind frame, and we're not so much, reliant and, with all the news that's out there in the media, we still have that positive mindset. And so these are the types of things that I get to hear from the communities, and these are the types of stories that I really hope to share in the culture and resilience section of the app. I know TikTok is very popular right now, and our children are sharing their their stories through those different platforms. So for me, I'm looking forward to working with several communities, not only like we said in the prairies, but expanding right across Canada. And one of the things that I will mention is that some of the next steps, if you're interested in getting your community on board. Start as a health director, maybe start to think about, who you would hire as a community researcher, someone that's, well respected, known in the community, somebody who's trusted. And if you're having issues with any of the connectivity, if you're in a remote or isolated community and you're having issues with your internet connection, we provide support, to those communities. We actually ship out mobile local area networks that can help with that. And so if anyone is interested, feel free to reach out to us. You can visit our website, www.covid19indigenous.ca. All the contact information is available there. We're available on social media. We have a Facebook page, Facebook.com/COVID-19 Indigenous. We're on Instagram. Like I said, our contact information is always there. So with that, I want to thank everybody for joining us here this afternoon. At this time, I'd like to invite our elder back to come share a few words and close the webinar with a closing prayer.